It's real simple. If not for vote suppression tactics, that's a fancy word for shafting people of color out of their vote, young people out of their vote, Kamala Harris would have won 3,565,000 votes. That's a number of voters that were denied the right to vote because they were purged or they were challenged or they had their provisional ballot thrown out. Let me give you some of the numbers. The reason I'm giving you numbers, and I've waited so long to make this report, is that I have to get the numbers from the government agencies, particularly something we call the Elections Assistance Commission. So people don't realize I used to be a professor of statistics. I was a forensic economist. This is my specialty, the numbers, which I usually did for attorneys general and the U.S. Department of Justice and other government agencies. And so these are calculations I would do, and I have done for federal courts. So we had, are you ready for this? According to the Elections Assistance Commission, the official numbers, we had 4,776,706 voters purged from the voter rolls wrongly. And I'm not making this up. I had the guys from that work with the Microsoft and Amazon go through every single purged name in two states, Georgia and Wisconsin. We took those two states. And we found, for example, in Georgia, that 198,000 voters, we actually have their names and addresses were wrongly removed from the voter rolls. And you'll be shocked, overwhelmingly, voters of color. And in Wisconsin, almost every voter removed by the purge was either a black voter in Milwaukee or a student in Madison. We had this brand new business this year of vigilante voter challenges. We talked about that on the air, where for the first time, very first time, an individual voter like Greg Palast can say, Thom Hartmann does not live in Portland. He shouldn't be allowed to vote. This is new. A third of a million, 317,000 voters were challenged by the beginning of August. NAACP said it was over 200,000 just Georgia alone by election day. We had 2.12 million mail-in ballots rejected, and that wouldn't mean anything if it were random. It's not random, Tom. According to the state of Washington, which did a study, you're 400% more likely to have your mail-in ballot rejected if you're black than if you're white. And Washington state has the least voter suppression of any state in the union. And according to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, which did a study, they found that the chance of your ballot being rejected, mail-in or in precinct, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. We have over 500,000 votes that were spoiled. That is, they said they couldn't be read. And again, it's very, very racial. We had 1.2 million provisional ballots rejected. People think, they get this, you go in and they say, oh, you've been challenged, you've been purged, or we can't find your name on the rolls. Here, fill out this provisional ballot. 43% of those ballots, according to the U.S. government, 43% of provisional ballots, and there were about 4 million in the last, or about 3 million in the last election. 43% of those were thrown in the garbage. Overwhelmingly voters of color, and in fact, if you're black, Hispanic, or Latino, or Asian American, the chance you'll be given a provisional ballot is 300% higher than if you're white. We're talking, there's some double counting here. The vote suppression factor is about 2.3%. Again, Kamala Harris would have even won the popular vote, 3.565 million extra votes. She would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. These are pretty exacting calculations, Tom. And so she would have won with 286 electoral votes. Again, this is absent if we didn't have a vote suppression Jim Crow voting system. And I'm telling you, I work all over the world on elections, from Britain to Venezuela to Liberia. There's no other nation in the world, except for old apartheid South Africa, where we have supposed democracies, where you have this racial, basically Jim Crow apartheid voting system, where you have massive, massive numbers of voters of color lose their vote. Also now, that's kind of widened out to, I found a massive number of young people. Again, that demographic is they're voters of color too. The color's blue because young voters, especially young women, that are targeted for the purges to be sent to provisional ballots, had their registrations canceled. or their votes disqualified, especially their mail-in ballots. NPR found that 1 in 7 mail-in ballots in the analysis they did were thrown in the garbage. Overwhelmingly, again, by the government numbers, 400% more likely if you're black than if you're white. So this is how Trump won, by racial and other forms of vote suppression. That gave him the election. And unless we restart this voting rights movement in America, 2028 is already decided. It'll be decided by Jim Crow, not by the voters. And in fact, in my film Vigilantes Inc., which, by the way, at gregpalast.com, thanks Leonardo DiCaprio, you can download it or stream it for free. But we go back, we show you a clip from the 1920 film over 100 years ago, the film Birth of a Nation, where they show a white actor in blackface putting 2 ballots into a ballot box. So the accusation that black voters vote multiple times to steal elections is an old trope. But this time it came back 100 years later with the Trump group, True the Vote. And they used that to justify these new vigilante individual challenges. Again, they proudly proclaimed 317,886 challenges by the beginning of August. And this is brand new stuff. This has not been done since the Ku Klux Klan used this personal mass challenge business in 1946. This is the Klan plan. And Trump used this to massive effect, especially in Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. This was a massive attack on voters of color, especially. And we're not guessing about what color they are. We called up 800 of the challenged voters. Almost all of them were black, and a smattering of some young white people registered as Democrats. Obviously, they know your registration, they know who you are, and they know your zip code. So this is how it's been working again, they brought in a 1946 Klan plan. So there is a long history here. But we have now, and that was justified supposedly by black people from, you saw in the film from True the Vote, 2,000 Mules, where they said black men, whom they called mules, were they showed them stuffing ballot boxes. And of course, they've been sued to a fare thee well because everyone that they showed on camera was a legal voter. They were just guilty of voting while black.
Yeah.
That Sinclair, which was their distributor, apologized and withdrew the film, but 10 million people have seen it.
Right.
They've made millions of dollars off this thing. But the worst thing is it resulted in a massive reduction in drop boxes and early voting, which is the main way that black people, especially in the South, vote. The vast majority of African Americans vote early or by mail. The majority of Democrats vote by mail. 51% more likely to send in your ballot by mail if you're a Democrat, which means 1 in 8 of your votes are going to be thrown in the garbage, just so you know, because it's very easy to come up with an excuse to disqualify a ballot. And if you go to gregpalast.com, or even better, go to Thom Hartmann and read my article, you will meet people that I have met who, tell me their story. So these are not just numbers. These are people that, so for example, Major Gamaliel Turner, career military officer, 70 years old. He was not sent his mail-in ballot because he was challenged by a Republican Party official who said he didn't live in California. Well, he was assigned by the President of the United States as a military man to a base in California.